Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm a children's occupational therapist and I work with children and young people with additional needs. I'm founder and CEO of a charity called Growing Hope, which provides free therapy for children and young people in partnership with local churches across the UK. We aim to grow hope for children, hope for families and hope in Jesus. We believe that God has a heart for all people, that we're all made uniquely, and we want to look at how additional needs can impact our everyday lives and just give you a bit of an overview of what that can look like for each and every individual that you may come across. When I was about 12, I was helping my mum look after children at a local Beaver Scout group. And there was a week that came along where we found out there was a little boy who was going to come and join us who used a wheelchair. And for me, I was like, great, that's so exciting, because I love to help people. I was thinking I can help him join in, it's going to be really fun. And the week arrived when he was ready to come along. We'd set all the ramps up in the school that we were using. He came along, he joined in game time, and it got to craft time. And at craft time, we had these kind of big tables in the dining hall, and he went and found a space at the table and I was standing opposite him. And what I did was I took his craft from his place, I took it to my place and I started to write his name. And he looked up, he looked me right in the eye and he said, I can write my own name. And in that moment, I felt really ashamed. I felt like I had totally misjudged him. I had looked at him as being somebody who was in a wheelchair, and because he was in a wheelchair, I had assumed that he wasn't able to write his own name. And that moment is a moment that sparked me from then on to really think about what I'm perceiving, what I'm seeing when I look at people. I really want to be someone who chooses to see as God sees, who doesn't look as the world sees and assume actually the least in people, but looks and sees the value and the hope and the things that we want to be able to be celebrating in each and every person's life. And that's something that I'd love you all to be thinking about. How can I be seeing as Jesus sees? How can I look at somebody not with just the world's eyes, but with God's eyes? So one of the things that it's really important for us to think about is what additional needs are and how they can impact us, and how we can actually understand those needs in the people who are around us. So additional needs are really wide ranging. It could be a physical need, a learning need, a mental health need, an undiagnosed need, anything which is impacting upon someone's ability to participate in activity. There are lots of different additional needs which are maybe common that might be helpful for you to know a little bit about. So there are mental health needs, things like anxiety and depression. Now, we all have times when we sometimes feel anxious, we sometimes might feel a bit low, but anxiety and depression are both about a persistence in a feeling of anxiety or a feeling of low mood. That can have a really big impact on people's day-to-day lives. And obviously, you might not know what someone is experiencing when you come across them, but things that can be really helpful is just enabling people to know what's happening, when it's going to happen. Just being a listening ear, being able to reflect back how people feel can be something that's really helpful. You have disabilities such as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. ADHD can impact people in terms of their ability to attend to activity, to be able to focus on one thing, and can often look like people fidgeting a lot or finding it difficult to stay in one place. They often have flitting thoughts as well and might jump between topics. Being able to also do things that show structure and also give lots of opportunities for movement can be really helpful for individuals with ADHD. You probably have heard of autism. Autism is a social communication disorder, so that impacts the way that people communicate and interact with other people around them. One of the things that can be really helpful for individuals with autism is making sure that we're really clear in our communication, making sure that we show what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. Often individuals with autism have some difficulties with sensory processing, so they might find some touch is quite tricky, they might find loud noises quite tricky. Some individuals might like to move around a lot more than others. So just giving people space to be them is something that's really important when we're looking at additional needs. We then have additional needs like developmental coordination disorder or dyspraxia. So developmental coordination disorder is often shortened to DCD, and it's actually an umbrella term which dyspraxia comes under. So it's about coordination problems essentially, but it's where you have a physical difficulty which impacts your everyday life, but that physical difficulty is kind of more significant than your cognitive ability. So actually your ability to learn and interact is fine, but your body doesn't always respond in the way that you want it to. So you might find everyday things that we can often take for granted quite tricky. Things like getting washed or getting dressed, or if you're a bit older, it might just be things like planning and organising your belongings or getting yourself where you need to be at the right time. So being aware of things like that can be really helpful when we're thinking about, okay, how can I support that child or young person to be able to engage in the activity that I'd like them to? You know, could I make sure I have an extra copy of a timetable so that if someone's stuck, I can help them out with that? Another additional need you might come across is Down syndrome. So Down syndrome is where people are born with an extra 21st chromosome, and that can impact people in different ways. Often you will see low tone, so muscles which are a bit more floppy. Individuals with Down syndrome often have a learning disability, which means that it just takes a little bit longer for them to learn all of the things that they do in their everyday lives. And also Down syndrome, because of the extra chromosome, individuals have a distinct kind of facial features and actually a pattern within their hands which enables doctors to diagnose Down syndrome, but often that means that people with Down syndrome are identifiable. But actually Down syndrome is a really wide-ranging, and everybody is an individual. The best thing for us to do is to be able to talk to the individual and see what their individual needs are. We also have disabilities like cerebral palsy, which is sometimes called CP. So cerebral palsy is about a lack of oxygen to the developing brain. So it happens before you're 2, and it impacts every individual in different ways. So it often presents as a physical disability. It can be just in one limb, it could be in 2 limbs, it could be in the whole of somebody's body. And it also has a varying amount of impact in terms of learning ability. So some individuals with cerebral palsy might actually use a wheelchair and need a lot of physical support and help for all of the things they do, like washing, dressing and eating, but they might be very cognitively able. They can have a conversation like you or I, but except the way that they communicate might be through a special computer system they use with their eyes, for example. Or you could have someone with cerebral palsy who actually has quite a significant learning disability and needs a lot of support and information in different ways. So they might need information in more of a sensory way or a visual way. They might want to learn about, for example, the story of Zacchaeus climbing the tree by having the opportunity to feel the sand on the road that he walked along, feel what the tree might have felt like, and then known the kind of hand of somebody helping him down the tree, and then the eating with Jesus. Being able to do things in a way that is more interactive can help people who have a learning disability to be able to join in. Some people may not have any kind of presenting need, but they may have things which impact their everyday. We all have things which impact us in our lives. We might be going through a period of grief, or we might actually have just, ended a relationship, or we might have had all sorts of things happen to us, and these impact the way that we then understand and respond and process everything around us. So one of the most important things we can do in understanding additional needs is being able to stop and say, how can I help you? What would be most helpful to you in this moment? And I think one of the things that often happens is that we can often get a bit afraid. We can often, when we meet somebody and we're not quite sure how to interact, we can kind of shut ourselves off, or we go to our own groups, or we go and talk to somebody who we're familiar with, who we're like, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing when I go and talk to this person. But instead of doing that, what we can do is we can choose just to stop, to say hello, to say, hi, how are you? To ask somebody, what their name is, ask them something about them, and then take it from there. So not be afraid to ask questions, not be afraid to approach people, and to be open about the fact that actually you're still learning and you'd love to get to know someone and love to get to know how they interact and respond to the world around them.